Welcome to the Career Ready Podcast. Learn about resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, interviewing, and all things you need to be career ready with the Career Service Center at College of DuPage. I'm one of your hosts, Pierre Michaels. Later in today's episode, I'm going to lead the conversation on doing career research by having conversations with your network.
And I'm your other co-host for this episode, Rebecca Harrington. I'm going to start our episode today by talking about a helpful resource called Career Launch. The easiest way to describe Career Launch is that it's a methodology to help students network and have career conversations with professionals. Pierre is going to talk a lot more today about how conversations with professionals can be a useful tool for career exploration. And I would like to add they're also a useful tool for job searching. But not all students have a built-in network of people to reach out to when they want to find people to talk to about their career. Career Launch is a methodology that students can follow to find professionals to talk to and then reach out to them in a way that will increase their chances of getting a response. If I asked you, what would you write in an email to a professional in a field that you've never met and have no connection with to get them to have a conversation with you? Would you know? Career Launch gives you that wording. It also gives you a 10-day process of reaching out that improves your chances of having a conversation that will propel your career. It teaches students that you do have the social capital and skills needed to get professionals to talk to you. Not only does Career Launch help students get those conversations, it also helps them with what to ask in those conversations to get the most out of that 20 to 30 minutes you have with that professional and to tap into that hidden job market. Many students know, and we've certainly discussed in this podcast, that finding an internship is one of the best ways to move your career forward, but many internships aren't posted. These professional connections can be your key to accessing these hidden job markets. Pierre and I are excited to bring Career Launch to the College of DuPage for our students. We offer multiple sessions each month to get you to level up your career networking game. And if you're not a COD student, we encourage you to check with your own college to see if they have it, because it is definitely growing. I feel like I'm doing a commercial, Pierre, but it's that good. That's why I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, Career Launch is a great program. I've enjoyed partnering with you to bring it here to College of DuPage, and the opportunities that it produces, it develops, the exposure that it provides for students. And what we're going to be talking about for the remainder of this episode as far as these conversations is really valuable. As we move forward with this episode, we're not really going to be talking about how to find these individuals. I'll hit on some general concepts to keep in mind. But, that is a big challenge of having these conversations. So being able to understand Career Launch as a resource is very valuable. So thank you for that quasi-commercial.
Right. I mean, again, it's like we can tell you all about how these are great conversations to have. But if you are feeling uncomfortable with how to find someone to have the conversation with, Career Launch is a great way to get the skills needed for that.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca. So as we move forward here, I just want to kind of give a call out to a few episodes ago when I was talking about researching careers from the unknown. And as we wrapped up that episode, I hinted at this conversation coming as far as a great way to really start learning about careers is to talk to people in the field and to find these professionals that we can have conversations with. So that's what we're talking about today, is pursuing people to have these informational interviews or career conversations. Those are kind of interchangeable names. So that's where I want to start, just kind of clarifying what does that mean when we say informational interview. This has been terminology around for a very long time. And the informational interview, for those that know what it is, makes a lot of sense because we're interviewing professionals to get information from them about a career path. But with Career Launch, and it makes a lot of sense to adjust this wording. Mm-hmm. So now Rebecca and I really like to use career conversation when we're referring to this because it represents the same thing, but it removes that stigma of an interview, which puts a lot of pressure in there. We're just having a conversation now.
Absolutely.
So we're having a conversation with professionals to get an understanding of their career journey, of that career path. So as we move forward here and we prepare to have these conversations, we need to start identifying the individuals that we will have these conversations with. And we could divide these individuals into two main groups. Those people that are in our warm network and our cold network. The cold network are people that we don't know, those that are in these fields, and we want to have a conversation with them. You heard it at the start. Career Launch is a great resource to do some of that outreach, learning how to connect with these individuals. But you could also jump onto LinkedIn or some other social media platform to research these people, do some outreach. Maybe there's a company that you desire to be at, and you can look at that company's directory and identify individuals that you can be reaching out to. We're not going to get into the best practices of that. That's what Career Launch is for. Maybe that's what a future episode is for. So to help you really launch into these conversations a little bit quicker, really think of your warm network. So the cold network being those that we don't have connections with. The warm network are those individuals that we do have connections with. So think of your friends, your family members' friends, your friends' family members, your coworkers, previous supervisors, teachers, really anyone that you have a connection with, that you've engaged with at some point in the past, could be a really good person to have this conversation with. And it's important to point that out because a lot of times we just engage with these people, but then we don't talk about our career path and career goals with them.
I always say this is not the time to keep quiet about it. Anyone that you meet, and seriously, warm can be everything from like a slight warmth to like hot, like it's someone that you've known your whole life versus actually I've met somebody who for 5 minutes and they're like, oh yeah, you should talk to so-and-so. Anything like that is gonna be a little bit easier than a cold network. Again, cold networking is great because you can reach people that you've never talked to, would never talk to, and it kind of opens you up to a lot of things. But I like the warm networking because it's always a little bit easier if you can say, well, I was just talking to this person and they recommended that I talk to you. Makes it just a little bit easier to make that connection.
Yeah, right. That distinction of a warm and a really hot network, right? I'm not getting into that, but, the warm network is just some kind of minor introduction, all of a sudden makes that person a little bit more open to the conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
But getting back to this idea of we have to have these conversations. We have to present this information to the warm network.
Exactly. Otherwise, how will they know that we need to talk about it?
Yeah, and that reminds me of a story of a student that I know here or that was coming to COD. He's no longer here. He was an international student participating in a program where he had to do an internship. He had a social host that he was connected with. The student told the social host that he needed to do an internship. So this social host connected with COD is like, oh, let me bring you to career services. Because that's all the student said is, I'm looking for an internship. So we're having a conversation with the student and the social host. And the student mentions to me, not to the other person, that they're looking for like an engineering type internship. But their social host that brought them to our office all of a sudden jumps in like, well, I do engineering here at COD.
Oh.
Well, if the student mentioned that to their social host, all of a sudden that student opened up a door that they weren't opening up. Right? So being sure to have these conversations with these professionals, sharing the details with these professionals can open up doors that we may not be even knowing are there.
Absolutely. I always say, when it comes to, people that you never know, like cousin, so-and-so may say, oh, well, actually, I have a good friend that knows somebody that works in that industry, or I have a coworker whose husband, works in that field. And so, but unless you mention that you're looking to learn more or that you are exploring, they're not going to know. And you kind of talked about this earlier, and you're going to talk more in detail about it. But man, having conversations with people that are doing the thing that you're thinking about doing is the best way to learn more about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So find out what your aunts, your uncles, your family members are doing, and then have conversations with them. So once we've identified those individuals to have the conversation with, we really want to identify what is our goal as we enter those conversations to make it more impactful, to guide us through that conversation. Because if we're not sure what our goal is, then we're not going to be able to really have a good conversation with that individual.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of this time. Yeah.
And when we think of these goals here, a lot of people will kind of group it into two categories, right? It will be, I'm just going here to learn. And that's what we're talking about, right? I'm going here to learn. And then there's this other one where like, this is what everyone desires, but we really don't want to set this as the goal. I'm going here, I'm having these conversations to create an opportunity to get an internship, to get a job. That may be your underlying goal. That may be your ultimate goal as you move forward, but you never want that to be the main goal of these conversations. You know, when we make that our main goal, it really becomes more self-serving. It's really more about, I'm in this for me and what can I get out of you? But we want to approach these conversations from a learning perspective and being able to connect with these individuals, regardless if it's warm or cold. And then we could follow up with these individuals and really make it more of a lasting impact. And then maybe opportunities will develop down the line, but we have to start off with that learning.
Absolutely. It's about building a personal connection with this person that will last longer than just that conversation.
Yeah. Right. Because, you know, as we learn, we could always go back to that individual, right? That first time we have a conversation, they introduce us to the field. And then we're like, you know what? This sounds great. I'm going to start going down it. Then we reach back out to them and say, you know, I've advanced to this level. I've got some questions. Can you help me? Right. That conversation can be an ongoing thing. So as we prepare for the conversations and this desire to learn, we have to start developing the questions that we would want to ask these individuals. The best questions will be really personal questions, as in it relates back to your individual goal. Maybe you're doing some research. And when I say maybe, I'm saying you're doing some research as you try to enter these conversations, get some insight to that individual if you can. Or maybe it's just the industry, but there's always resources out there to do some research. And then you develop your questions that you want to ask them.
And I do think it's important. One way to think about these questions is that you shouldn't be asking a question that you could Google the answer for. You know, if it's something like, you know, what's the main thing this job does, or, you know, what I don't know, just something that's really generic, that's not helpful. You know, you want this to be, like you said, personal, like you're making a connection.
Yeah, right. If you could just do a Google and online search to find these answers, you're wasting everyone's time. So as you think of these questions, I'm just going to run through some different ideas and different questions that you may want to incorporate here. Again, it's really based off of what you're seeking to learn about that career path, but hearing from these professionals gives you some great insight. So if you want to learn about that career path and how they ended up there, again, you can't Google how they got there. So asking, how did you get started in the field? How does this relate to your education? So you get to hear what they've been learning and how they get to apply that on the job. Or what would you recommend someone interested in this path study? So you're getting their insight. You could identify some of that online, but you're getting to hear their story of why they think that's a good connection. Or maybe you really just want to learn more about that career field. Asking, what does your typical day look like? How has that evolved as you spent more time on the job? What are some challenges you face in this position? What do you enjoy most about this work? You know, asking questions like that, you really get to see their perspective. And then we have to take that with a grain of salt, because the things they enjoy may not be the things you enjoy. The things that they hate may be the things you enjoy, right? So being able to at least hear what they're talking about, they may present it in one way, but that's why we have these conversations, so we could get that better understanding. Maybe you want to learn about the industry and this path as an option. So what are the current trends or challenges within this industry? What does technology impact the work you do? Or, you know, maybe how do you see AI coming in and adjusting what you're doing? You know, that, you know, maybe some things you could identify through an online search, but some of the stuff is also like current trends and, live things that a web search isn't going to provide. Maybe you could be asking, what are career advancements opportunities in this field? So starting to plan out what that career path may look like. Maybe your goal is to learn about the company itself. So you don't want to ask, what does this company do? Right? You could
right, exactly.
just look that up. But asking about their culture, right? A company can put that online and saying we're a great friendly company, but then to actually hear how someone talks about it is going to be different.
Absolutely.
What kind of professional development opportunities are provided to you? How does the company live out their values and missions? So again, you could look up what those are, but then to really see how that is being played out within the company are things that you can learn about the company. So there's some other questions to consider related to professional development or that career-life balance that you may want to incorporate in these conversations. What advice do you have for balancing work and personal life? So it's not necessarily about the job itself, but just that professional development and that balance. Or how do you stay up to date on industry trends and development? So I hope you're noticing that even though we have this general goal of learning, there's a lot of different things that we could be learning about. And that preparation really comes through thinking of the questions that we're going to ask so then we can dive deeper into those different components that will help us better understand this career path as we do our own research here. As you wrap up this interview, don't think of it as, okay, I'm wrapping up this conversation, right? This is just the starting point of the research. So you could be asking things such as, is there anything else you'd like to share about your career? Really making it about their story and what insight they have to share. Are there others that you would recommend I connect with? I really like that question. I can't encourage that question enough because that warm network, if they provide that introduction, we've now got someone else that we could easily reach out to. Would you be open to connecting with me in the future? You're going to want to connect with them regardless of if they say yes or no. I don't know if anyone would ever say no to that.
Right.
Maybe that's a red flag and we don't want to connect with them. But being able to indicate that I'm not here just for this moment. It is an ongoing relationship that I'm looking to build. Mm-hmm. When preparing for informational interviews, personalize your questions based on your specific goals. I provide a variety of questions here, but make sure that you're always adapting them to your own needs. So, Rebecca, before we wrap up here, are there any other insights, things you want to share on this topic?
Well, I think, you again gave great suggestions for questions, and I love the idea of personalizing it. And I would just take that a step further of make a priority list of questions. So, chances are in 20 minutes, you're probably not going to get to all of these questions. It's good to have extra questions. But if there are certain things that are most important for you, that you're most curious about, do those first. And then, hey, if you have time for some more, that's great. And I think, your questions that you just shared are good too, as far as, is there anyone else to talk to? Can I keep in touch with you? Those are almost like, again, at the end of an interview, right? When they say, do you have any questions for me? It's like, those are the wrap-up questions, and they're just as important as all of the others. And I think that it's easier if you think of it again as, like you said, kind of something that's going to continue. So this is just the first conversation. And I think going in with a sense of curiosity about this person and their career and what they've done, because people love to talk about themselves, right? We all love to do that. And I think sometimes, we want to share things about ourselves, right? And we want to impress them. But it needs to come from a place first of curiosity about that person. And then absolutely, if they share a story that you can, that's really interesting because, I've felt that too when I was doing my projects or what, you can bring in some things. But remember, you're listening and you're responding and connecting to them with your questions. That is going to get you the best relationship with that person that then can continue on in the future.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, going back to the prioritizing the questions, I'm going to throw in a career launch tip here. One of the first things that you're saying is confirming the amount of time that you have for the conversation, because you want to be respectful of their time.
Sure.
So you get that right away. and then you go back to your list of questions and you know what you're prioritizing, and then you're managing time.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca. So as we wrap up here, just need to emphasize that point. The goal here may be to learn about careers, but we also want to be building a relationship. So within that in mind, you want to be following up, sending a thank you, very similar to what we would talk about for a job interview, because you want to show that appreciation, that respect for that individual within 24 hours, and then that additional follow-up to build that long-lasting relationship for the future.
Thanks to all of our listeners for joining us today. We hope you feel better prepared to start researching career options through conversations with professionals. There was no listener question in today's episode, but if you have a question you want to hear answered in a future episode, you can submit it to careerpodcast@cod.edu. We look forward to sharing more with you in our next episode.